Hi, and welcome to Cockatoos with Attitude, Episode 61, Behave, Keys to Parrot Training. This is the audio version of our video cast that you can find on YouTube at youtube.com/Chloe Sanctuary. That's CHLOESANCTUARY.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
For newcomers and old-timers alike, the Chloe Sanctuary hopes to give you insight into the health and happiness of your companion parrots. We hope to help you build happy homes using reliable and proven tools. The best homes are built on a rock-solid foundation. And the best foundation for a happy home is the bedrock of science. When we stand on the shoulders of giants, the scientists who have worked long and diligently to understand our companions, we can reach new heights of understanding. And understanding is the key to success.
I think treated, most of these birds have a good prognosis, and I would say
What does avian veterinary medicine have to tell us about our feathered friends? How can we prevent illness, see the signs of disease before it's too late, and care for our birds through ill health? What light does behavioral science shed on their nature, needs, and hopes? How can the tools of behavior shaping make our homes happier for us and our companions?
Shake.
How can we deal with biting, screaming, or other misbehavior? What is it like to live among parrots? Let them roam around about you and share a life with them. How much freedom do you give them? What happens if you form a bond of trust with them? Watch and see what understanding their true nature can do for you. Come with us on a journey as we do more than examine a parrot's world. We live in it. Make some popcorn and bring in a few wood blocks. Let everyone have something to chew and a comfortable place to perch. Cockatoo is a presentation of the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.
Hi, and welcome to Cockatoo, Episode 61, Behave, Essential Keys to Parrot Training. Yeah, this is another one of our series in parrot training. I listened to an ABA podcast, an Applied Behavior Analysis podcast, and of course they're targeting children because 9 times out of 10, that's where people are using these. It's a good podcast. There's a lot of little things I pick up. Some totally new things I pick up. They were talking about an article by Critchfield which deals with how to talk to people about applied behavior analysis. In other words, how to train, okay? These training techniques from behavior science. And I thought when they were going through them one by one, I thought these are just exactly what you need to know for working with birds. I'm not just talking about the science itself. So I like to go through these kind of one by one and discuss them. And the first one, which V.S. Skinner, who is the one who opened up this whole science of operant conditioning, which is basically working with animals to change their behavior, to shape their behavior. Sorry, sweetheart, I'm trying to protect you. Is that the organism is always right. Are you an organism? Are you right? You are? You sure? All high back there, babies. And what he meant by that is that the behavior is lawful. It follows some basic rules. They're doing things in order to obtain a certain consequence. But if you think of the organism as always being right, so a lot of people will say, like, birds doing something wrong. No, they're doing something according to rules, to behavioral rules. And so they're seeking some kind of a consequence. So if you think that the organism is always right, it puts you in the right frame of mind to work with any animal. But with birds, it's especially important because we are mammals and they're dinosaurs, okay, they're avians. So their behavior patterns are quite different than what we're used to seeing. For example, in the wild, they're more likely to fly away from a situation than they are to get involved in fighting. That's not something they would normally do in the wild. But when you take away their ability to fly, or you put them in a small space like a room like this, you can expect altercations.
Peaches is an amazing personality. Her daily maintenance requires dedication and mindfulness. She requires 2 forms of medicine, 7-course meals, and effort to entice her to eat. Extensive preening every day, special tools to trim nails, constant attention to her vocalizations, daily walks, and twice yearly checkups due to the possibility of impacted feather follicles and the nature of her spinal injuries. It seems a common misconception among the general public that parrots are like toys in a toy box. Nothing could be further from the truth. They are complex creatures. Recently, scientific studies have shown them to be at least as intelligent as chimpanzees. Every captive parrot needs special humans who will dedicate themselves to understanding them, those who know their species as it lives in the wild, special people that understand their social, mental, and physical needs. They need to be understood for what they are, and not as merely human companions, as circus performers to bring smiles. Peaches needs all this and more. She is our special girl. Will you help us care for Peaches? Please make a donation today at our website, chloesanctuary.org. That's spelled CHLOESANCTUARY.org. As a special thank you for your donation, we will joyfully send you a postcard with Peach's happy face.
Behavior isn't personal, so when Skinner was studying this, he was teaching rats to pull a lever to get food. He didn't say that the rats were pulling the lever to get food, but he was saying that the rats desired a consequence, which in this case was food, and that was the reinforcer that caused the behavior, that led to the behavior. So behavior isn't personal. They're doing what they're doing according to basic laws of behavior. So they're looking for a particular consequence, and they do whatever behavior gets them that consequence. So sometimes we get in situations where they're doing behaviors that we don't want them to do, and you kind of take it personal. I've had birds with me that lunged at someone. Didn't hurt them, but lunged at them, and then the people take it personally. They say, well, that bird doesn't like me. Well, that's not what it is, of course. They're doing that behavior to get a certain response. And that may be to keep you away because they're nervous about you. It may be because they don't want you in their environment or you're crossing their territory lines. So you have to learn to look at behavior as a function. So the function of the behavior is to obtain something, whether it be a social interaction or some item they want, or to get something out of their environment that they don't want in their environment, to push something away. But don't look at it as personal, because it really isn't personal. Behavior has a function, and it's easiest to change behavior when you see what's causing it, okay? So if you see, like right now, Peaches wants to get, it's fairly obvious she wants to get on the floor. She's been getting on the floor a lot lately, climbing down and playing, and I never thought about, well, that particular behavior won't go too well when doing a video. Because if she's on the floor and there's tripods out, she's going to play with them. So right now, you'll see her trying to maneuver herself into positions where she can get back on the couch and then climb down onto the floor. So I have to find ways to divert her attention, What I'm going to do soon, of course, if she keeps it up, is I'm going to sit her on a perch. And because she's handicapped, she can't get down from a perch easily. Generally, that'll calm her down for a while. Generally, that will calm her down. And then I can get her back on my lap. And if she tries to climb down again, then I put her up on a perch. It's harder to do when the room is filled with other birds. And lately I've had to do this maybe once a night. She's out for 3 hours. Somewhere along that line, she's going to try to do something like what she's doing now, which is climb down my arm. Once she's down my arm, then she's going to try to climb onto the floor. Aren't you, girl? Going to put you on a perch. All right. So, in this case, seeing the behavior as a function of the desire to get on the floor, I'm now going to put her on a perch. So what are some of the functions of behavior? Well, one is social. A bird will do a behavior because it wants a social interaction. Like Lorelei came down just a little while ago and got in my lap because she wanted to be preened and petted. So one thing is social, and people often kind of forget that part, that these birds want social interaction. So in desiring that interaction, they will do certain things, and sometimes it may not even be things you want, such as screaming. Screaming is just repetitive vocalization, so you get a bird that squawks every 2 seconds for hours on end. And usually that kind of squawking is due to a lack of social interaction over a period of time. Get away from her. They could be seeking attention. The screaming can be that they just haven't had any attention so long, even though they've put out the signals that they want it, that they just start repeating the squawking over and over again, which is what we call screaming. In other cases, it would be like this one. She's seeking social attention, but she's kind of also seeking protection. So another thing that can drive behavior is aversion. So she doesn't want these other birds close to her, so this drives her to sit on my shoulder and have me protect her. If I have to get up because there's a problem in the room, this one is most likely to grab on, call her the hitchhiker, because she's most likely just to grab a hold of me and want to hang on while I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And again, that's aversion to the other birds. That drives behavior. Another thing that drives behavior is when they want something, okay? Seeking some material object. So that happens a lot with Bob. If Cecil has a toy, Bob will almost always try to take it from him. So a lot of Bob's behavior around Cecil is driven by the desire to take whatever object Cecil has away from him. A good example, too, is with Snowball. If you've got a Frisbee, then in most cases that Frisbee will drive Snowball's behavior. He'll want to play with the Frisbee, won't you, boy? So that's object-driven. Seeking some object in the world. Another thing that drives behavior is seeking sensory stimulation. You've seen people stand in line for an hour to get on some roller coaster. Okay, they're getting on some ride in a theme park. What are they seeking? They're seeking that intense stimulation. So we get that here too. She's been seeking to have her head preened, so she goes to Bob. And Bob's looking for some kind of social interaction, so it works out well. He's looking for something social. She's seeking stimulation. You see those two behaviors functioning. And as long as they get the consequences they're looking for, those behaviors can continue. One thing you need to do is to plan your own behavior to support behavior change. And that's not as easy as it may sound. You think, well, I can do this or do that, but you actually have to kind of plan it out. You have to think, now, if I have a bird, like with Peaches, if she gets on the floor under certain circumstances, like when we're doing a video, then I'm going to do these particular actions. The first thing I'm going to do is put her up on the couch next to me. If she keeps trying to climb up on me or to get on the floor, what she'll do is she'll climb up on me, then climb over this way, and she'll climb down on that side of the couch, and then get on the floor. Or she'll climb to the edge, and she'll climb down. It's not easy for her to do. So I'm going to do this a few times. No, Bob, leave her alone. And again, I'm keeping her from going to the edge, trying to go to the door, because she chews on the door. And also to keep her from going to this edge of the couch where she tries to climb down and get behind the couch. So at the same time, I'm working with Bob. If he gets where he's paying too much attention to her, I have to tell him no. And then he'll go on and do something else. So these are planned. These are not things that I pull out of a hat. Now, if I get these two, which are male and female, getting too close to each other, then I have to separate them out. And the first thing I'll do is just gently do that. Separate them. Put my hands in such a way to keep them apart. So planning your behavior to support behavior change. For example, if you've got a bird that's a screamer, you don't want to give it a lot of attention while it's screaming. You can't just ignore it, okay? But you can give it attention when it makes a good sound, a sound you like to hear, or teach it to ring a bell and respond to running over to the bell. Respond when they make some other sound or do something else, or respond when they're quiet after they haven't been crying for a while. So you're responding to the right time. And again, that's planning your own behavior. And one of the other things, too, when you're working with your own behavior is you also have to plan what's going to happen if it just gets to be too much for you, okay? If it gets to be too much, what am I going to do? So you can be in a situation working with the bird where you may have to put the bird up and walk out of the room and, go outside and look at the sky for a while, because you just can't cross the barrier you're trying to cross. Let's say that if the bird's biting or lunging or screaming, if you walk away for a while and think about it, think about how you're going to approach it and go back, that's a good way to handle it. But know how you're going to handle it when you get in too deep, because it's going to happen. They're quite different than us, and you can get in too deep with them. So plan your strategies. And we have some other videos on training, and they give you ideas on this. Knowing how you're going to react in situations and what you're going to do exactly, and how you're consistently going to deal with behavior, that makes life a lot easier. And then so you work with it within that framework, and if it isn't working, then you come up with a new plan, and again, train yourself to respond a certain way until you finally make it work. You have to be flexible when you're training birds. You can't just assume that everything's going to work out just the way you plan, because you're dealing with animals that are quite different than us, and their world's different. And we don't get up in the morning, and in the wild they get up in the trees and they shout at the sun. As the sunlight comes up, they're up there shouting and everything, and they kind of fly together wherever they're going to go and eat food, and and act as a community. That's not kind of how we do it. We get up, drag ourselves, whatever, to the shower, and have a cup of coffee. I mean, our world is, and then you're ready to go have a work. We get ready to go to a job. Most people go to a job, spend 4 hours there, then have a lunch, and then they have another 4 hours there, and then they go home, and it's quite different than what these guys do. So when you're planning your behavior, you want to be consistent. You want to make sure that your behavior is consistent with the bird. So if a bird is, let's say a bird's biting, then you're responding to it by handing them something they like, giving them a treat, like a whole almond that they have to open to keep them from biting. So you have to be consistent. Now, if you have a certain way you're going to do it, make sure everybody that works with the bird is going to be consistent. If you have somebody who can't follow the pattern, can't follow the program, then they shouldn't be working with the bird. Because it's difficult for these animals that don't understand English. They may understand a word or two in certain contexts, but because they don't understand English, you have to give them the same signals. And the simpler the solutions you can come up with, the better. So simplicity is an important factor. So if say you're dealing with a bird that's biting or lunging and you're handing them an almond, then be simple. Always use the right arm, present it the same way. That's the way you want to do it. You want to keep it simple and always do it the same. So consistency is important. You don't hand the almond this way, and then hand the almond this way. It's always from your chest out to here. Whatever, you just make sure you're always going to do it the same. Continuation is another important factor. You want to, if you're training a certain behavior, you want to continue with it. So if you train a bird to step up, then you're going to want to repeat that behavior over and over. Have them step up, and then step up, and then step up. Continue it. And then on a daily basis, you want to continue to cue the behavior, as in putting out the hand and saying step up. If you train something but don't practice it, it's like somebody who learns the piano and doesn't practice. It gets rusty, and then you may not see the behavior. So that's important, continuation. It helps them develop good habits, too. So if you train step up and have them do that frequently, they learn to respond to your cues. It's not just the step up itself, but they're also learning to respond to your cues. That's what they used to call in the old days. They'd say, you give the command. You don't give a command to an animal. You cue a behavior. You present a certain stimulus that indicates that they're going to get something that they may want. So with step up, they get social interaction. But at first, they're usually getting a treat. So they may be getting a sunflower seed, or they may be getting a little piece of papaya, or they may be getting some little treat when you're first training it. And then eventually, you can be just giving them what we call a secondary reinforcer, which is just praise and a little petting and saying something nice to them. And that's all they need. It doesn't wear out like food does, of course. If you're using a food reinforcer, eventually they're going to get full. And once they get full, it doesn't matter what you offer them. Like, I could give you chocolate, and you're like, oh, great. But after I've given you the 5th chocolate bar, it's probably not going to make you interested in doing what I ask. No. It is ignorance of Bob's nature that turned Babaloo into a living gargoyle. Bob's would-be parents made a hasty choice and found themselves in living hell, torn between guilt and frustration. I have seen the joy in Babaloo's eyes now that he has a new life with me as his companion. To see Babaloo love and trust again is worth the effort of a lifetime. But, once again, Bob is heading toward the pain of separation. My heart nearly broke the day I discovered that he was heading toward a cloacal prolapse, that his life will be cut short. To find love and acceptance and then have it stolen away from you by failing health is too much to bear. We can slow the progress of his failing health, but we can't stop it. He will need several surgeries, and eventually Babaloo will die. We want to give him the best possible life until that day. His surgeries will become progressively more expensive over time. Won't you please lend Babaloo a hand and donate to his medical fund today? Our donation button is on our webpage at www.chloesanctuary.org. Just be sure to say, "For Bob," in the notes when you donate. Now, it's important, too, to pick your battles. And all right, Cocoa Bird, you need to keep in mind that sometimes you think it's a small battle, but if you've got a bird that's picking the hairs on your arm, that may not be a small battle. Snowball used to just kind of do that, pull the hairs on your arm, and someone taught him to actually start chewing on the skin. So you can go from a small, minor irritation behavior to a large one. So, but you want to pick your battles for sure. You want to start with the ones that are most important. So if you've got a bird that's lunging and biting, that's where you want to go first. And you have to plan your way there, though. So it's a big battle to deal with in many cases, and you want to start at the beginning, not towards the end. In other words, if you've got a bird that's biting, the first thing you need to do is decide how you're going to deal with it. If a bird's biting, let's say you have a bird that only bites when it's coming out of the cage, then you have to decide how you're going to deal with it. Are you going to deal with what's more important, getting the bird out of the cage? The bird doesn't bite outside the cage, or rarely does. Then you may want to use a stick to get the bird up on to get it out of the cage. So the first battle may not actually be the biting. The first battle may actually be your primary objective is to get the bird out of the cage. So then you think about ways to do that. Well, I could offer something other than a hand. Maybe it's the hand that's causing the problem. So if they're not afraid of a stick and you can get them to step up on the stick, great. Keep in mind, though, a bird can run down the stick and bite your hand. So there are lots of different ways. We have videos on that, but one example is, like I said, with an almond, handing them something that if they put it in their beak, they can't bite you. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't drop it and bite you, but if a bird likes almonds, for example, and you put an almond in their beak, and they have some hunger, they're a little bit hungry, the odds are they're going to hold on to that. Or if they like to hold the toy, they have a particular toy they like, and you get that in their beak, then you're dealing with that situation. You're dealing with the biting, but pick your battles. So you decide where you're going to start, whatever the most important battle is, and then if you can deal with that mostly and only deal with the peripheral items when you really need to, you'll be better. So it'll be much better if you're picking your battles and focusing on the important ones. It's easier to prevent misbehavior than it is to rectify it later. It's easier to fix it, like they say, nip it in the bud. So you're going to look for certain types of behaviors that may happen, such as what I was saying, the picking of the arm or the occasional turn and just lunging. You want to get those before they become established behavior. Remember, too, that ongoing problem behavior is strongly controlled by past and current environments. So if you have a bird that, for example, Peaches, in this environment now, she likes to get on the floor and start going around and finding little pieces of wood and chewing them into smaller toothpicks. That's what she likes to do. So this is a particular environment where she's done it in the past, so it's likely she'll do it again. Try to remember that behavior is that it's strongly controlled by past and current environments. If you have a bird that's frightened by large groups of people, then that's something you'll have to work on. If you want to take the bird out to Renaissance fairs. So you want to think about what environment am I in with a bird when these particular behaviors happen. So behavior is quite often tied to environments. We act one way when we're at the post office, we act another way when we're at a bar, we act another way when we're at a theme park, another way when we're at a job. So try to relate the behavior to the environment and things that have happened in the environment before, and also what's going on in the environment now. And when you start to do that, it makes it a lot easier to see how behavior is coming about. And you can change behavior when you can start to see that. It helps you to figure out ways to change behavior. Be evidence-based, okay? That means use tools that have been scientifically discovered. The tools of behavior conditioning, operant conditioning. Also look at their behavior. Actually look at what they're doing, okay? So being evidence-based is look and see exactly what they're doing. Don't try to pull something out of a hat and try it and look for Coco. Look for evidence in behavior, okay? And try to work it out and see exactly what happens. Don't try something just once and give up. Keep working with it and try to Coco and try to develop an overview of what happens with the behavior when you do certain things. So if you say no to a bird, how does the bird react? Don't say, well, the bird doesn't pay any attention to me. It may be paying attention in a way that you're not alert about. So if you take a camera and you set it up and you try that same situation and you look, you may see that indeed they're reacting. A bird might be walking across the floor when you say no, and it might just duck its head slightly when you say no. So in other words, they're reacting to what you're saying. They're not doing what you want them to do, but they're reacting. So once you see that you've got a reaction, now you start, okay, I can get a reaction this way. What do I have to do in order to get the reaction I want? So look at actual evidence, take video of what's happening, observe carefully what behavior is happening, so study their behavior, and especially if you use cameras and video it, you can look back and see real evidence of how they react to different situations and different things. And then use that in your tool set to start changing behavior. So too, when you're looking for evidence, behavior is going to be reinforced by whatever the consequence is. So with salamander, if he can get on the floor and walk over and start chewing on those curtains, he's doing it for sensory, most likely doing it just for sensory stimulation. Okay, he wants to that's something he wants to do. He just wants to chew on that object, and it makes him feel good. Just the tongue on the material as he chews. Okay, so we see the consequence. Now, there's other things we could do. Now, for example, you might put a cloth down there he could chew on. You might put something like this down for him to chew on, and maybe that'll solve it. Then the other thing is you put that item a little away from the wall where the curtains are, and so that he hits that spot before he hits the curtains. And now you have an alternative, something that he can do that's not going to cause you to react like, oh, have to buy new curtains now. And it's a way of fulfilling his desire for that sensory stimulation or that object that he wants. Because you've got to fulfill that. Because it's whatever that consequence is they're seeking, you have to find some way to fulfill it. It's like the urge to eat isn't going to go away. You have to find whatever it is to fulfill that need to eat, okay? And it's the same with any of these things they're seeking, whether they're seeking a stimulus, they're seeking a social interaction, whatever that particular function their behavior is serving, you have to find something that you can replace it with. We call this replacement. Okay, you're replacing one behavior with another, but there's still the consequence that they need. So,
we hope you will consider supporting us on Patreon today. We produce up to 2 videos a month. As a patron, you pledge to give us a donation, whatever you feel is right and meets your budget. Patreon gives us your gift monthly. You can easily set a limit on how much you donate a month. You can change the amount of your pledge at any time. Your gift will allow us to continue bringing you entertaining and informative videos. Patreon.com/Chloe Sanctuary. We look forward to your participation in Cockatoo.
Skills become more fluent with practice, so as you practice doing this, you're going to find that you become more skilled. It takes time, but you will become more skilled over time. So give yourself time. It's going to take time to get fluency in skills, and just work a little at a time. Make sure to pick your battles. That's important. And get the tools you can. Put the tools kit together, behavioral toolkit you need to start making changes. A learner's failure to learn always signals a teacher's failure. Now, that doesn't mean that you're a failure and you should give up. That just simply means that somehow you failed to communicate That just means that you failed to see into the situation clearly enough and act in such a way either to create the right environment or to find a way to fulfill a unneeded consequence. So it's the teacher that made the mistake, and that goes back to that original point. No, Snowball, back off. No. The original point that I made, which is that an organism is always right, okay? So when a bird... Hi, Coco. So when a bird doesn't learn... Coco. 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 So when a bird doesn't learn what you're trying to teach them... No. So when a bird doesn't learn what you're trying to teach them because you haven't seen the situation properly or you haven't used the right tools, and you just have to keep working at it until you finally get it right. Right? Right, Coco? Come on, Coco. You're the vociferous one. You can say goodbye. Coco, say goodbye. See you next time. We welcome your feedback on our videos. We look forward to your insights, tips, questions, stories, and pictures. You can email us at cockatoo@chloesanctuary.org, reach us on Twitter @Chloe Sanctuary, and join with us on our Facebook Chloe Sanctuary page.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.